So you're a daily independent journalist. What stories are you working on now above and beyond these?
Yeah, so I'm really focused on. I've been good friends with Tommy Robinson, for an example, and obviously Tommy Robinson's sitting in prison right now in the UK, and he's been very truthful, very factually correct when it comes to the crisis that's been going on for the last few years. Not even the last few years. I mean, it's been over a decade now, and the UK has an issue with young children who are being raped by those they've brought in to the country, which are heavily Pakistani, or just, you could just say, Muslim men who have come into their country. And it's been going on for a long time, but the real crisis here, and I don't know if a lot of Americans are aware of this, is the government's been covering for a lot of these individuals because they don't want stereotypes to circulate about these migrants who have been coming into their country, because they've allowed millions of them to do so. So Tommy Robinson, whose own cousin was sexually assaulted by one of these individuals, that's why he's so passionate about it, has been making documentaries and going out there and reporting on this for years now. And he's earned wrongfully earned titles that I don't think he is. And they've gone after him, but now he's sitting in prison. And so I've been communicating with Tommy, like I do with a lot of the J6ers, emailing them and following up with them, because I do believe that we should talk to political prisoners if we can and get their side of all of this. So I've been communicating with Tommy. He's thrilled that Elon Musk is now talking about all these stories. He's thrilled for the victims, but he's going to probably be in prison until July, but he's being tortured in prison. He's in solitary confinement. He doesn't see anyone near him. He maybe sees a guard once a day. The jail itself, the 17 cells, he tells me 16 of them are empty. So he's literally just alone for the entire day, which has a lot of psychological, I guess I would just say, effects when you're alone for that long by yourself.
It's torture. There is no, you can pull out fingernails. There's no greater form of torture than solitary confinement for a human or for any higher order animal.
Yeah.
And their argument is, I've had Tommy on, I had Tommy on shortly before he went to jail. I've had him on a number of times. I've been following him since like 2018, since I heard that he was convicted, sentenced to 13 months within 5 hours of being arrested for alleged, filming the gangs as they entered the court. I can't believe this is going on in England in 2018. It's only gotten worse. He's in solitary. The explanation is for his own protection, right? Because he's in a prison that has a statistical overrepresentation of the very people or demographic that he's been railing against for the last decade. And so they stick him in there for his own protection.
Yeah, and he did an interview. This was a couple of years back on Tucker Carlson's show, where he detailed one of his other, I guess, times he had to go to prison. And the Muslim population did assault him several times. They'd walk past his cell, spit on him, throw other things on him that are vile, and they would attack him. So I understand why they have to keep him separate from all of them. I mean, if you really authentically care for his well-being, then yes, you would keep him separate. But again, he shouldn't even be in prison at all. This is something that they're saying is just contempt. And so they sentenced him to 18 months. But, when Tommy was not in the country, when I knew that they were going to lock him up as soon as he crossed over back into the UK, I told him not to go back. I said, we should find you a country where you could seek political asylum. I think President Trump's going to win in November. I don't think you should go back. And he said, I'm not going to fight these people. I'm not going to fight these people and make them, allow them to win. I'm going to stick up for my country and go back. I'm not afraid of them, Breanna. And so he went back. And I think that's amazingly brave. I don't know if I would have done the same, given the fact that I think they're going to try to hold him even longer. I mean, they're trying to call him a terrorist, even though he's never committed a terrorist act ever in his life, and he loves his country.
No, he explained it. It was the documentary Silence, which detailed how the media covered up for the misinformation, false story about the Syrian boy who was not the victim of waterboarding from a racist white kid, how they lied about everything as relates to that kid, how it highlighted failed immigration policy, and was just one more example of it. And 18 months for contempt because he republished the lies, which were actually not lies as far as any evidence goes, about the Syrian boy. And he aired that documentary and put it on blast. It was in Trafalgar Square? I mean, it was in a big.
I know it was in a big venue. Yeah, I don't remember where directly it was, but there was over 100,000 people. I think he told me that were present.
Right, when you only correspond by email with Tommy, like he doesn't have access to a phone at any point in time?
He might have access to a phone. I don't know. I know that I communicate with him through email since we're across the pond, so it's a little bit easier to do so. I can even give you his contact privately as well if you'd like to reach out to him, because I think
I get in touch with his team via DM on numbers and social media. It's just that it's when I get Jake Lang, who's in prison up in DC, I don't know how he does it, and I don't want to ask too many questions, but it lands him in solitary every now and again. He does video from
Yeah, I don't know how that works.
The last time he had a big, like it was a cutout. It was just his face through everything else was whited out. So it looked a little weird. But so you're working on Tommy Robinson, or at least following the Tommy Robinson saga. That's going to be on hold until he's out of jail. But Elon is putting the pressure on all of the UK system.
We also did the Enrique Tarrio story yesterday. If you remember that.
On. Well, I remember the story that you were covering it for the January. Oh, okay, please. So Enrique Tarrio, everybody knows, 22 years for a seditious conspiracy. What was the story you reported on yesterday?
Yeah, so Tarrio told me, this was when he was in the DC jail, that he was approached by the DOJ who wanted him to lie and say that he orchestrated January 6th with President Trump via third-party person. So there was a mystery person who was in between them communicating back and forth. And so he wanted, the DOJ wanted Tarrio to blame Trump on orchestrating it with him. And when Tarrio refused to lie, they requested 33 years in prison, and the judge gave him 22 years. So Tarrio yesterday, I got a letter from his mother, actually, was requesting a pardon from President Trump. And they're deciding the same thing we just detailed. Tarrio is sitting in solitary confinement. He's been in solitary for years by himself for 23 hours a day. I remember seeing a picture of him I believe it was being brought into the courtroom. And sadly, he looked very pale. He didn't look like his normal color. He hasn't been out in the sun for quite some time. He detailed to me once too. So there's a lot of elements of abuse there, but his lawyer wants him to be released and is asking President Trump for a pardon. And I think rightfully so. He should be pardoned along with all the Oath Keepers, along with all the J6ers. I mean, there's very few people who I don't think should be pardoned at this point. And I think that we need to save them. We also need to consider possibly giving them settlements, because Tarrio wasn't only just being dragged through criminal court. There was also several lawsuits that were filed against the Proud Boys, and it's meant to drain them financially so they can't appeal their convictions. He was another one who was being sued over the KKK Act, I believe it was. And I don't know if that lawsuit's still ongoing. I know a lot of J6ers were also sued by left-leaning attorneys at this point. And they've just tried from every avenue to bankrupt these people. And Tarrio wasn't initially even asking for crowdsourcing for his legal fees. He was willing to pay his own legal fees to fight this off, and wanted everyone else who couldn't afford a lawyer to gain access to that through crowdsourcing. And now he does need people's help through the appeal process. But I think President Trump will pardon him. I'm hopeful that President Trump will pardon him, because it doesn't make any sense. He wasn't there that day. It doesn't make any sense why he'd be sentenced to 22 years.
No, it makes zero sense. If people say, oh, he wasn't there, but seditious conspiracy, you don't have to be there to get it. First of all, I mean, it's such an ambiguous wording of a piece of legislation to begin with. And 22 years compared, I mean, like rapists and murderers, especially under Biden, get pardoned and commuted or not convicted, or like sentences of 6 to 9 years. The only people who do not deserve a pardon or a commutation, Ray Epps and the pipe bomber. Are you familiar? Are you following the pipe bomber story? Are you involved with that one at all?
Yeah, so I actually was talking to Darren Beatty about this yesterday, and I still can't believe we're still talking about the pipe bomb story, because it's so crazy to me. Mike Benz did a great job at showing the image that they just recently released. It's some video that they magically stumbled
blurred
on.
out his eyes.
Yeah, so you can't even use biometrics. How absurd. But it's not absurd. It's expected at this point. I mean, they held on to it for nearly 4 years. So not surprised that they don't want us to figure out who he actually is, because now we could possibly screenshot it and run facial recognition on our own behalf. But again, it's not surprising. I mean, they don't really want to find this guy. They pretend like, oh yeah, we've got a $500,000 reward out there, but they don't care, or else they would have actually found him. I mean, they found grandmas who were just walking by the Capitol on January 6th. They had no problem finding those people, but finding the pipe bomber is a real mystery.
It's the shoes are such, not a dead giveaway, but like, okay, you're dealing with a pair of shoes that are unique. You're dealing with pixelated video. Apparently someone said there was one frame where they didn't get the eyes properly, but that they were glasses. So they still, and as if it's not suspicious that this person would have the wherewithal to cover every part of their body showing flesh. And then 4 years later, they say we're newly releasing footage because we haven't been able to find this guy. Yeah. It is so, we'll see what happens under the new administration.